All right, we got an opponent. 24-39. Let's go. Let's go e4. And we're playing a Scandi. Okay, so knight c3 is the move. YG Hub subbing himself. Thank you for the tier 1. Okay, so queen d8 is one of the possible retreating moves by the queen. And the move here is, of course, to play d4 and to develop our pieces normally. Knight f3, bishop out to c4. We seek the most active squares for our pieces. Now, b5 is already pretty weird. And I'm not entirely sure what this move achieves other than create some weaknesses. So let's complete our development. Let's castle. Now, where should this bishop go? Where does the bishop on c1 belong in these kinds of positions? So we just need to find the most active square. And in my view, the most active square, well, why f4? I mean, we can put it on f4 or g5. Yeah, bishop f4 is a good move because it also supports the move knight e5. We're going to slam our knight into the center. And the bishop does a nice job making sure that knight is more stable. I also like the g5 square for the bishop. So why not? And white is slightly better here. It's not like black's position isn't terrible. Okay, so he plays knight to d5. Now, it's tempting to take the knight here, but that would give him an improved center. And this is one of those situations where you just have to keep the tension. So we're just going to drop the bishop back. And I don't mind it if he takes on c3 and seemingly ruins my pawn structure. So after the game, I won't have to do it after the game. I'll explain it during the game. Why is this deficient pawn structure not actually as deficient as it looks? Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, he's gotten rid of his knight, which means that if we look at this bishop on b3, it now is operating relatively uncontested along this diagonal. The second thing is, and I've explained this on several occasions, there is a visual deficiency in this pawn structure, but on the other hand, we have a lot of pawns in the center, and they are defending each other. So on the one hand, this may look bad, but it's actually a very solid pawn structure. Okay, so we should play a4. We shouldn't let him trap our bishop. Let's go a4. And rook, bishop a6. Okay, so he clearly creates an x-ray against my rook. What should we do? How should we respond to this move? Very simple. Again, no need to overthink it. All right, Brandon, I'll play one game and then I'll be ready for you. Yeah, so simply rook e1. And now you should immediately start thinking about various sacrifices. And in particular, what sacrifice or semi-sacrifice am I thinking about here? Looking at these pawns on e6 and on f7, these pawns are quite a bit unprotected. I mean, they protect each other, but that's right about it. So there's a very thematic idea here, which is to take on f7 and to remove the defender on the e6 pawn. In fact, let's do it. Knight takes f7. I'm going to do that pretty intuitively because at the very least, very least, we are going to get 2 pawns and a rook for 2 pieces, which is already a good amount of material. But my bet is that we're going to get more than that if I play this correctly. Thank you, Software House, for the prime. Because if we look around the board, you guys should notice the rook on a8. What can we say about that rook? Well, that rook is undefended, which means that what are we threatening here in addition to just taking the rook? What follow-up? Okay, so he defends against that, but what follow-up were we threatening? We were threatening a fork on f3, yes. All right, now we really have a wide choice, and we have to figure out what our priorities are. Now, it seems to me that it probably makes sense to try to get this rook and attack this rook as much as possible while we have the chance. We don't want to take on f7 prematurely because that rook isn't going anywhere. It's pinned. So let's go queen h5. Let's get the queen out, and let's put even more pressure on this rook. Hopefully that's going to lead to something good. And this concept is a very important one. The fact that we're not in a hurry to take the rook, a lot of people would grab that rook first and think later. But we obviously don't need to do that because we're not in a hurry. And now, again, we have several approaches to this position. We are still not in a hurry. So we can take other stuff first. Let's play a takes b5 first. And notice that this pawn on b5 stops his knight from getting out to a6 or c6. So he's completely paralyzed on the king side. We have 3 pawns now. And, and bishop takes f7 is going to come at some point. We still don't need to take. we can still move our queen, and we're still going to be able to take his rook at our convenience. Now, we have a very crafty move with our queen, very clever little move to e2. Could somebody tell me what the idea is of this move? Why are we bringing the queen specifically to e2 and not to, say, g4 or h3 or d1? What are we accomplishing with this move? Thank you, Kalas Boykin Live. Yeah, so we're looking out at that bishop. He has to move the bishop, but now we think about, well, what is he weakened by playing bishop f6? What is he left unattended, or at least relatively unattended? And if we think about it, we ask ourselves that question, we'll notice that the queen is overloaded. Because on the one hand, the queen is tasked with defending f7. On the other hand, it kind of has to take on c5. So dc is a very simple move here, which kind of overloads the queen. And he can take on c5. I mean, I don't see a checkmate there. But in the event that he does, we can just bring the rook in, and then we can take on f7 and just crush him in the center and on the king side. So he can also play bishop takes c3. I know perhaps some of you are worried about this move. Okay, so he does play queen takes c5. Now notice that we still have not taken his rook. And I look at the rook on a1 and I say, this rook could be occupying a super juicy open file on d1, which we're going to do. And only on the next move, when all of our pieces are in the game, are we going to take his rook and go after his king. We had other ways to win, I think. We could have taken immediately and gone queen e8 and bishop takes b8. I'll show that after the game. But I think this is the most clinical method because it ensures that all of our pieces are in the attack, which gives us almost this kind of insurance, right? If something doesn't work out, it's a good idea to have all of your pieces involved because then you're going to have quite an abundance of resources in case what you wanted to do initially isn't as good as you may have thought. Okay, so now we can do what we were planning to do on the previous move. We take on f7. And now, between these two checks, queen e6 or queen e8, which one do you guys think I should give? Well, queen e8 is not checkmate, but queen e8 is the better move. And the reason for that is a very simple one. We want to put the rook on d7, but we can't. He has got a knight on b8 that's guarding that square, but we can actually just take that knight. We simply win the knight. But the point of that move isn't so much to win the knight, although that's a nice byproduct of that. The point is to get our rook to d7, which is going to be the killer blow to Black's king. So Black is absolutely busted here. He's out of defensive pieces, and his king is just toast. Not to mention, he's now down in exchange. So he just left his center unattended, and that's what happens when you do that. Okay, queen g5. We still have to be careful because he is threatening checkmate in one move. Now, what would be the simplest winning move here? And I always advocate for this. Rather than going headfirst into the complications, we have a very simple move here that doesn't require any calculation, and it wins the game on the spot. So, and the move here is, well, it's not f3. f3 is a little bit too passive. If we look at this bishop, we can notice that it's undefended. The bishop on b7 is undefended. And we can either play rook d7, rook takes b7, but I even like queen d7 and queen takes b7. Because that wins the bishop, and attacks the rook on a8 at the same time. So queen d7, and a resignation from Black. Brandon, I'll be ready in just a second. So that's basically that. And that was a nice game. I mean, that wasn't anything extraordinary, but it was a Scandi. We developed all of our pieces. Okay, we developed all of our pieces. So b5 is already a little bit dubious. Because while this move does grab space on the queen side, there's a negative part to it, which is that it creates a backward pawn on c6. And it saddles him with these queenside weaknesses, which actually later came back to bite him. So e6. Also, I would probably develop my bishop in front of the pawn chain before playing e6. So he developed a little bit passively, although he didn't do anything terribly wrong. Knight e5, knight e5. And here was, I think, the first critical moment. I think a lot of people would be tempted to take on d5. But this actually helps Black bring another pawn into the center. It shuts down the bishop. Look at my bishop now. It's just biting on this d5 pawn. And Black builds up this very nice pawn chain. And, White doesn't really have anything to show for. Maybe White is slightly better here. It's very, very important to resist the temptation to do this kind of stuff, to capture a piece just because it's tempting to do so. Okay, so bishop g3. And he takes on c3. I think this is actually a mistake. I think this is actually a mistake because it, as I explained, it does two things, both of which are good for white. The first is that it leaves me with a very strong diagonal. This bishop on b3 is now essentially uncontested along that diagonal, which creates these tactical opportunities such as knight takes f7. The second thing is that these pawns are actually good, even though they're doubled, even though they're isolated. I call this like shedding your skin. We can play the move c4 in the future. Let me just play a random move for the sake of illustration. And the great thing about this is that I can then push my other pawn up to c3, and I can get the best of all worlds. I can disrupt his queenside pawns and still have that central pawn chain as a consequence of the fact that I have two c-pawns. So that's why I'm on a crusade to show people that doubled pawns are actually kind of good. Okay, so a5 is met with a4, and now bishop a6 is almost the decisive mistake. I just think he didn't realize that these pawns, although they protect each other, are very much susceptible to this kind of a tactic. I think that my opponent should have probably done some damage control, maybe gone queen b6 and tried to get this knight out of there as quickly as possible, although black is already in quite a bit of trouble here. So bishop a6, rook e1, c5, and this is really our only chance to play knight takes f7. If we screw around, and we could also play queen f3, that might have even been a better move. But if we screw around too much, if we play the move d5, what does black have here? Black has a very nasty little move, which shuts down our bishop. What move am I talking about? Well, that's exactly what I'm getting to, curious. So the move is c4, and we don't want our bishop to be shut down. So we really only have this one opportunity to get the bishop to e6 so that the move c4 is no longer effective. Now, if he plays c4 here, then he loses his queen. We're taking on f7 and attacking his queen. Now, another question would be, what would have happened if he'd taken on f7 with a king? And although he doesn't lose the exchange here, I mean, the king is very easily checkmated with a couple of very natural attacking moves, and his position just collapses here. You should just see that visually. There's really nothing to calculate here. So rook f7, bishop e6. He plays bishop b7. Once again, if he would have played knight c6, white to play and win. Who can find the most technical winning idea? How do we go about winning this? And I actually kind of mentioned the correct idea already, but we can just apply, yeah. So we need to get the order right. Yeah, queen f3 is good enough, but even taking on f7 first, and then playing queen f3 and picking off the knight. So when your opponent has a weak king, in addition to looking for checkmate ideas, always look for forks. Undefended pieces become particularly important when your opponent has a very weak king, because that king is going to be susceptible to various checks. And if you have an abundance of checks, then chances are one of those checks might also be a fork. That's why I was paying such careful attention to the fact that his rook on a8 was undefended. So bishop b7, queen h5, and increasing the attack on his queen. And now after queen f8, we simply play a takes b5. We grab a pawn, we prevent his knight from getting out to c6 or a6. The rest of the game is very simple. Queen e2, x-raying the bishop. Then we take a pawn, overloading his queen. We bring the rook into the game. And then the final stage of the game where we just basically take all of his pieces. So very simple game. We developed our pieces. We seized our tactical opportunity. And then we didn't rush taking that rook on f7. We only took it when we were absolutely ready to take it. And we brought our pieces into the game first before taking that rook, which made the attack so much easier to conduct. Bishop d6. Oh, bishop d6 is probably even better. Yeah. You want to give a checkmate, but maybe black has queen c8 here. Maybe black has queen c8 here, and of course you can't give this check because I'm just going to take your queen. What do you mean b5 seems counterintuitive? Do you mean a takes b5? Well, not at all. I'm just taking a pawn. At the end of the day, I'm just taking a free pawn. That's all I'm doing. So it's not terribly counterintuitive to just take a pawn. Yeah, that was a great game. And it just shows that if you really adhere to these basic principles, you can beat pretty good players. It doesn't always take crazy amount of creativity or imaginativeness to win these kinds of games. We're doing the speedrun to 2,500. 120 points away. Okay, so let's play a Rai Lopez, despite what I revealed yesterday about Rai Lopez. Okay, so he plays a Petrov. This is called the Petrov defense. And there's a lot of good lines against the Petrov. But one line that sort of flies under the surface if he plays the move d6 is the move knight to c4. That's a bit of an odd move because it seems to obstruct the development of the bishop. But the point is that the knight is very well placed here, and we're going to get the bishop out to d3. Not everybody knows this variation. Okay, so d5. That's an interesting move. Okay, let's get this knight out of here. Let's play knight takes e4. And then X Dingus, thank you for the prime. And then this pawn on e4, can we deal with this pawn? How can we deal with this pawn? What should we do? So there's two different ways of playing this. We can play the move d3 and try to get rid of it directly. But another good way of doing it is to play the move d4. And either he takes en passant and helps our bishop develop, or he has to let this pawn remain in a very nice central square. So he does the second thing, and the bishop can just come out to e2. Remember, not every piece needs to be scaling Mount Everest at any given moment. This kind of development is perfectly good enough. And this knight on c4, it's fine where it is because it's controlling a lot of central squares. It's nicely placed on c4. That's not necessarily a very typical square. It's also defended by the bishop. So if he plays bishop e6, which is quite likely, then we don't really have to move the knight away. Okay, so let's castle. And this pawn on d4, we can see that it's only defended by the queen. Okay, so first of all, let's deal with this bishop. Where should this bishop go? Where should the bishop on c1 go? Should it go to d2? Should it go to e3? Should it go to g5? Well, it shouldn't go to g5 because he's just going to take it. It should go to f4. We're also blockading this pawn. If he goes g5, that's very weakening. I mean, he might go g5, but okay, he doesn't. But that would be a very weakening move. Okay, so now I feel like this knight on c4 has overstayed its welcome. And there's a very good knight. There's a very good knight for this square. There's a very good square for this knight. What am I talking about here? That knight is being pressured. I know that I said we don't have to move the knight. Yeah, so e5 is one good square. But even the e3 square, I actually like the e3 square because from e3, the knight potentially supports the pawn move d5, which would grab more space. He goes g5. I saw this move. The bishop repositions itself to e5, which is a nice central square, and he's really weakened his king. So although he starts this pawn attack, it's a very, very double-edged sword what he's doing. Okay, now let's make the move bishop c4. Let's try to trade off his bishop and soften his king up even further. I don't think he's worse here, but it's definitely a bit of a tough position to play for black. But he's playing it very, very well. So, you know, it's anybody's game right now. Takes. Now our knight is nicely centralized, but if he plays the move bishop f6, okay, bishop d6. Oh, he's played this really well, for sure. But one way that we can try to exploit the weakness of his king, is to get the queen out to h5. So let's do that. All right, let's go queen h5. Now he can take our knight. In fact, I think he probably will. He plays queen e7. Okay. So ideally, I'd want to preserve this knight. He's threatening kind of to capture it. Well, the move f4 allows g takes f4, and then if rook takes f4, then he takes on e5. So there's nothing wrong with making the occasional retreating move. Let's play knight to c4. And then an eventual idea... Whoops. Wow, 11 wins and 1 loss. This guy's good. 11 wins and 1 loss. So let's get the rook into the game. He lost to a 1600 though. In bullet. Yeah, I'm telling you guys, at this level, I keep playing these weird guys. Okay, let's go d5. Let's get this pawn into the center. Yeah, I'm definitely getting the sense that I'm being outplayed right now. But we'll see. So let's go d5, queen g7. Okay. Let's lock him up. Let's lock up the queen by playing c3. That game at 99% accuracy. No. Yeah, the pacing. I could sense in the pacing that something was a little bit off. I can sense in the pacing that something is a little bit off. It's like, you know, it's the 5 seconds a move kind of thing. But it's fine. I have a decent position. I'm definitely worse now. We're gonna get our queen back, and then he's gonna probably play a6. Let's try to disrupt the position with a4. So if it's 5 seconds a move, how many moves do I have to survive? I have to survive like 40 moves. Okay, so of course he's going to think on a takes b5, and he's going to think precisely 5 seconds. Let's go knight c2. Let's try to get it to d4. Yeah, this is looking quite suspicious, but we are going to try give it the old college try. If I beat this guy, then I will go down in glory. No, there's a lot of these people at this level. Unfortunately, 5-minute games we have seen that it's just unbelievable, honestly. The amount of people that, but we're not okay. Oh, rook d3. Ah, without rook d3. Yeah, I'm just busted here. Let's go back to d4. He's going to probably play f3. Yeah, we got him down. We boiled him down to like a minute and a half. The problem is I'm pretty close to getting checkmated here. I don't play against entrants, but how do I know this guy? How was I supposed to know that this guy is cheating? Well, I don't know. I don't know that he's cheating. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. We always do. We always give these people the benefit of the doubt, and I'm not going to make any claims until we check the game with an engine. Yes, the pacing is certainly suspicious. It calls for checking him, but you know, I always bring up the analogy of imagine that you were the one playing really well. You know, would you want it if people accused you willy-nilly of cheating? And I think the answer is no. Yeah, it's the 5-second moves. Okay, so I'm going to play d5 here. I mean, I managed to play pretty well here, I think, given the situation. How does he actually win this? I'm not sure. Okay, he's below a minute. Now, if he goes rook f4, I thought I can give him a check and then go... Okay, he's got an only move here, and he takes the same amount of time. Okay, let's play h3 to stop checkmate. No, I don't think he's... I mean, I'm actually probably not worse here. I don't know. It's just the pacing is so weird. It's literally every move is 5 seconds. But I think I'm fine here. Okay, let's just go queen g3 to prolong the game as long as possible. Because I know I'm not going to get checkmated. I know I'm not going to get checkmated within the next, like, 5 moves. And I have a feeling that he's going to lose on time. Or at least I'm going to try to make him lose on time. I mean, just flag him sounds very easy, but when someone's playing this well, it's actually not that easy. I'm trying to not get checkmated at the same time. Okay, here's another move. We survived another move. Oh, king h5. Okay, so let's just go b4. Yeah, he's not going to make it at this rate. King h5, king h4. Look at that idea. No, he's gone. Unbelievable. And you know what else is... Oh, and there's a mouse slip. Oh, my God. We got him. Ranjo Moma, thank you. All right, let's analyze. I'm looking. Yeah, baby. Strong. OG. 92.6, but his last couple of moves messed with the, let's see. Yeah. I mean, he's either really good or he's cheating. I mean, he played most of his moves were best. Oh, okay. Rook f6 is a blunder, though, which is a really weird move. Nobody would ever play that. Yeah. And then he started playing best moves again. Wow, king h5 is best. Okay. Yeah. It's definitely very, very, very suspicious. And that's honestly why we should probably stop the 5-minute speedrun. It's very sad, but it's just how it is, unfortunately.